entertainment right here on WOCA, The Source.
We are The Source, WOCA.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Beautiful looking Monday morning. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty good. Rob. I've been a pretty healthy person most of my life, you know. It's just been one of my blessings in life, and I'm not complaining, you know. There are worse things you could have, you know, than health.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, does it? But lately I've had something going on my leg, and not to bore you with my own things because it's boring. But I'm telling you this because for the first time in my life, I had 4 prescriptions. I've never had to have any prescriptions for anything. Well, I take that back. I think I had a toothache once and I had to get an antibiotic.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so I had 4 things I had to get from the pharmacist. 4. Mm-hmm. And they asked me at the pharmacist, do you want the generic brand? And I said, well, what did the doctor say? And the doctor said on the thing, whatever. I said, well, whatever the doctor said. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know enough about this. You just give me whatever the doctor said. I'll trust the doctor. Mm-hmm. So anyway, you know, I mean, in my mind, I thought, well, it's probably the same thing. But at the same time, you know, generic macaroni and cheese is not as good as Kraft.
No, it is not.
So I figured the same thing might be true for medicine. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know for a fact. But we have some really stringent rules when it comes to pharmaceuticals in this country, and you know, like it or not, I think I don't know. I think the intent is in our best interest. We could argue about that, we could debate about that, but I think the intent is always there. Somebody who knows way more about this than I ever will is on the phone. Traci Medford-Rosow. She is an attorney. She's a partner in the New York City law firm Richardson and Rosso. She's the founder and director of the College Education Milestone Foundation. She held the position of global head of intellectual property litigation and general counsel of Europe, and an award-winning best-selling author. We have something in common, the intellectual property.
Yep.
Ours may not be as intellectual as hers, but we've had to deal with intellectual property attorneys. She has written a book called Inflection Point, and this is a memoir. The subtitle is War and Sacrifice in Corporate America. This is going to fascinate you, and it does have to do with pharmaceuticals. Good morning, Traci. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me on, Larry.
Where are you right now?
New York.
New York City. New York is where I'd rather be.
And it's nice finally. It's beautiful.
Oh, is it nice today? Yeah. Well, even when it was
finally the winter's gone.
Even when you had your snow, though, I was online looking at Times Square snow, and in one of the side streets, somebody had a camera up there. I was living vicariously through my internet. So, drugs are big business, right?
Well, I think yes. I think the whole healthcare system in the country is big business.
Yeah. But I guess what I wanted to get to, the question I want to get to is this, that when you have big money in anything, there can be corruption. And that's where this story lies, right? In the corruption part?
I don't think this is a story about corruption. I think this is a story more about a battle over it is a story about the battle to be the first generic to sell Lipitor, which was the biggest pharmaceutical product of all time.
But didn't they want to do it before the patent ran out?
Yeah, they did want to do it before the patent ran out, which is not unusual. That's very normal.
Well, see, that's why I thought it was corrupt. I was thinking, well, that's not fair to the other guys who want to do the generic brand.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a whole system. There's a law that was put in place in this country about 30 years ago, actually 32 years ago, called Hatch-Waxman, and it controls these patent disputes, if you will, between the research-based pharmaceutical companies that invent the drugs and the generics that want to copy them and sell their own version of them.
When we have money that is raised to find a cure for something, it almost seems to me that the investment is made by the public at large, because all the investments are coming from donations. If it's like Muscular Dystrophy Association or the Cancer Society, you know, I mean, we're all throwing in 2 pennies here, $3 there.
Well, the vast majority of pharmaceutical research in the world comes from research-based pharmaceutical companies. Very, very little comes from the government or private foundations, and none, of course, from generics. Generics are not research-based organizations. They
Right.
copy drugs that are already out there.
Right. Yeah.
But haven't the generic drug companies themselves file lawsuits against the name brand drugs?
Well, that's what this book is about. This is a story about the right to be the first. Ranbaxy was the generic that wanted to be the first generic in the United States to sell its own version of Lipitor, and this story is about that battle that takes place over about a decade.
So in your research of the topic, and your research is hands-on because you were part of this, right? You were part of the lawsuit?
Right. I was the head of the global litigation team at the time that was responsible for this lawsuit.
Okay, so we as readers of the book will get an understanding of how this drug came to be, how it went to market. But do we see a bigger picture when we look at this specific story? Do we see pharmaceutical trends in this whole country?
Well, I hope so. That was one of my goals in writing this story, was to show a sort of behind the scenes bigger picture, because it's easy to just take a snapshot of something and not really fully understand it. So I tried to use one story out of hundreds and hundreds of stories, which is emblematic of a situation that is going on all over the United States. In fact, I didn't even really come to focus on this story until 3 or 4 years after I left Pfizer. I think while I was there, I was just busy doing my job. Once I went into private practice and started representing other pharmaceutical companies and seeing this pattern repeated over and over again, I started to say to myself, wow, this just isn't working for anybody anymore.
Oh, my God.
Does it affect the way we get medicine, or the length of time it takes to get a medical, a pharmaceutical approved? We always hear stories about, it's available in England or it's available in Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Is that why?
No, this is a different aspect of that. What you're talking about is FDA approval to sell the drug in the first place. That is a very interesting factoid, but most people don't know. In fact, I hadn't really focused on it either to that extent until recently, but I just read this fascinating article which said it takes anywhere from 10 to 12 years to get a brand name product approved through our FDA, and it costs about $1 billion to do it.
$1 billion. You got to sell a lot of Lipitor.
When these drugs are made, do the drug companies in the U.S. use everything made in the use all the raw materials from the U.S., or do they go outside the United States and import things?
Now, you're asking me a question about drug manufacturing, which I don't really know the answer to. I mean, because I worked for Pfizer, and I think at the time when I was there, it had 100,000 employees. You can imagine how specialized we were. So I know a lot about one thing, which is this one niche, this patent infringement niche. I don't know about the drug manufacturing, even for Pfizer, much less for all the other pharmaceutical companies. I mean, they are American companies, and they do have American plants. I mean, Pfizer's big manufacturing plant was in, Groton, Connecticut. I don't know where the other drug companies' manufacturing plants are, but...
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I wasn't really sure what Lipitor treated, by the way. I had to actually look it up. So can we start at the beginning with this a little bit? What is the story behind Lipitor? What caused the company? Who developed it? What was the company that developed it?
Well, I mean, Lipitor
Pfizer?
it's a Pfizer product. It's a lipid lowering drug, which means that it does reduce the bad cholesterol. So it's in a class called the statins.
Okay. So it's to reduce cholesterol, and
the bad.
How long ago was it approved by the FDA?
Oh wow, I don't know if I can remember that. I think Pfizer started to sell it. It was probably in the 90s at some point, but I don't remember exactly.
So now, is there, like with music, there's there used to be a copyright limit, I think, but now I think they changed that for music, but I don't want to get into that. Is there a limit? Like, can you hold a patent only for 30 years or something, or is it less than that?
Well, that's another little interesting factoid, which is that if you invent something in the United States, or anywhere in the world, if you invent something, whether it's a pharmaceutical drug, that kills and cures cancer, or it's a widget, you are entitled to get a patent on that for 20 years. But the only invention that doesn't enjoy that full 20 years is a pharmaceutical product, because of the fact that it takes 10 to 12 years to get FDA approval. That whole time, your patent is running. So by the time the pharmaceutical industry, the companies finally get their drugs onto the market, they've lost at least half, if not more, of their patent life.
Wow.
Gosh.
Is there an explanation as to why the FDA takes so long?
They want us to be safe. They're trying to do a good job for us. They want the drugs, one, to be efficacious, which means that they do what they say they're going to do, and two, that they're going to be safe. So that whole process, they take their time to make sure that nobody's going to get hurt. The other factoid I just read, which I thought was fascinating, that of all the drugs invented, only 1 in 10,000 makes it to the market.
Gosh.
Only 1 in 10,000. So there's $1 billion being thrown down the drain a lot in this country.
The 999 that don't make it, that money that was spent up until the point that they don't make it is lost. And they drop off at different stages in the drug's development.
Okay.
And when you talk about making it safe for consumers, when you see commercials on television, there's always some kind of disclaimer on the bottom saying this may cause, and then it rattles off everything, which may make it seem, well, why should I take this if I'm going to die or have these side effects?
Yeah, this is another area that I don't know much about, just from a consumer. I know. I mean, the companies are required by law to list all of the possible things that could happen. That's part of the FDA, review process. So, I'm sorry, but I just don't know, how that all. I'm not an FDA lawyer, and I'm not sure.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, that's
if
okay.
one person out of 10,000, their right toenail drops off, then the drug company may be required to put, may cause toenail to drop off.
Oh gosh! Wow.
All right, so I think you've brought a topic to the show that we're so curious about, but I also think we're being unfair to you as far as the book is concerned. So let's clean up our act a little bit, take a little break, and we'll come right back. And I promise we'll be more fair to the book. The book is called Inflection Point, and just so you know, we do get the books, but for some reason today we didn't get it. It didn't get here yet, so we're a little bit in the dark. Maybe that's explaining a lot about what we've done so far, but we'll do it on the other side. I do have notes here.
Yes.
So we'll try to pretend to be intelligent. Traci, Medford-Rosow, just hang in there. We'll be right back. Got a little break coming up, and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For Monday, partly sunny and quite pleasant, the high 84 to 89. Mainly clear Monday night, low 63 and a few inland spots near 70 along the coast. For Tuesday, partly sunny and quite warm, high 85 to 90. And Wednesday, more the same, partly sunny, the high 84 to 89. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hey, Matt, I know Sunrise Automotive does auto stuff, but I need some tires for my truck. Can you recommend someone?
Yes, I can. We do that.
No, I mean, I need them installed and balanced and all that.
Yep, we do that.
Well, my son needed his windows tinted.
Yep, we do that.
I need my seat replaced.
Yep, we do that too.
I need a new roof line, a new spoiler, and a new trunk.
Yep, we can even do that too.
Okay, I get it. I suppose you can also do a radio show too.
Well, as a matter of fact, join me, Matt Gibbs from Sunrise Automotive, every Tuesday at 10 for auto repair with personal care right here on The Source.
Hospice of Marion County has an urgent need for volunteers to share a conversation with someone, run errands, hold someone's hand. All you need is a willingness to help others. Our volunteers believe the blessings they receive far exceed the services they offer. Will you consider serving, caring, and making a difference? Call today, 873-7441. Hospice of Marion County, making more moments of life possible.
Hi, this is Vanessa Lane Jennings with the Jennings Law Firm, located here in beautiful Ocala. Join me every single Friday at 10:30 for Legal Lane. We'll be discussing various legal topics such as family law, criminal law, contracts, and much more. So this is your chance to call in with your legal questions and have them answered. That's every Friday, 10:30, right here, WOCA, The Source.
that this country is in the toilet. Some would even go so far as to say the economy is going down the drain. But we say, if water runs through it, do it.
Hi, I'm Sean Scott, owner of Mike Scott Plumbing, and I approve this message.
WWOCA, WWOCA.
All right, 10 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. I was just thinking something during the break. I don't know if this is going to sound nutty or not, but if you go to the pharmacist, now I already told you that I've hardly had any medicines in my whole life, but they did ask me if I wanted a generic, right? Mm-hmm. So now that I know just a little bit that we've learned from Traci Medford-Rosow, who's on the phone, her book again is called Inflection. What I've learned so far, Traci, is that the investment to make that medicine possible is paid for by a company. And so if I ask for a generic, and then my next question will be, well, doesn't my insurance cover it either way? And they say yes. I'll say, well, then let's go for the guy who paid for it. Let's support him. Does that make sense?
Well, now you're segueing into another law that I know very little about, except for I do know the basics, which in the United States we have something called mandatory substitution laws, which means that when a generic is available, the pharmacist must dispense the generic unless your doctor checks the box on your prescription that says, brand name only. But that's the extent of my knowledge about mandatory substitution.
Well, do the generics sometimes fall short of what the brand name promises as far as what the medicine is supposed to do?
Well, okay, now I'll give you my some knowledge about generics. My knowledge about generics is basically, as a consumer and just a person who's known other people to take generics. In many instances, the generics work the same. I've heard stories where people say, I got this generic of this drug, and I don't know, but it just isn't doing the same thing. Fortunately, like you, I've had very few drugs myself, so I don't have that much, so far anyway, I don't have that much personal experience, but I just anecdotally, I do know, that generics, people do say that their generic doesn't work as well, and they go back to their doctor and say, I want the Merck brand or the Pfizer brand or the Johnson & Johnson brand, whatever. But the other little piece of information is that, which is in the book, at the end of the book, I tell a little story about the first generic obligatory, which was Ranbaxy. It actually had to be withdrawn from the market 1 year after it was launched because there was little glass particles that were found in the bulk.
Oh,
so
no.
this drug that, well, of course it wasn't manufactured in the United States, which is part of the whole other issue with generics. So most of these generic companies are not American companies. So the FDA doesn't have the oversight capacity that they do if the plant is right here on our own land. Mm-hmm. But in this case, and so it was well documented. In fact, I think I pretty much tell the story by just quoting some of the New York Times articles because they sort of tell it very quickly and succinctly. But that's what happened, and they had to actually withdraw that product. The other problem with generics is that if these companies are not American companies, then these drugs are being manufactured for the most part not here, which is taking jobs away from our economy.
Yeah, that's true. Let me take a few phone calls. We got the phones ringing on this topic. Again, the book is called Inflection Point. Traci Medford-Rosow is the author. It is a memoir. It's War and Sacrifice in Corporate America. It's regarding specifically about pharmaceuticals and the generic versions and the relationship between the companies that make the two, and sometimes the lawsuits that happen between the two. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. I'm on my way to the doctor right now. My question being is, a lot of these drugs will say, their American name or whatever, so-and-so Pharmaceuticals, New Jersey, and it was bottled somewhere in the United States. But when you look into it, it comes from India or China. And there was a big PBS special on that the fillers and binders that form the drugs or keep the medicine in there could be from anything from cow manure to pig manure. And it's unbelievable the stuff I found out about this stuff. And to me, a lot of this stuff causes reactions. As a matter of fact, I've had a reaction, and that's why I'm heading back to the doctor.
Oh, wow.
And it's unbelievable what's happening to prescription drugs in this country. I would suggest to anybody that either comes from Bayer or somebody in Europe, or Israel, or even possibly Puerto Rico, but nothing. You know, you have to be so careful where your drug was actually manufactured.
Traci, you want to comment on that?
Well, that's what we were talking about. Just my experience, just from hearing other people. Now, this is another, person that I've listened to who's told the same story. He's talking about the excipients. He talks about the filler and the binders that keep the drug, sort of together and stabilize it, if you will, the active ingredient, so that when it gets into you, it does what it's supposed to do and not anything else. He's obviously had a bad experience, which is, another anecdotal experience that I've picked up. Again, my expertise is not in the manufactured generic drugs. I only know what I hear from people like this man who's been kind enough to call in. So, I guess it happens more often than we realize.
But it sounds like if the legal system is allowing challenges to the patents, then we need to be careful about our legal system needs to be careful about who is allowed to, I guess, have a license to that product. Otherwise, we're going to have people with fillers, or rather, medications with fillers in them.
Well, I think that's probably the area of the FDA. I mean, they're responsible for making sure that all drugs that are on this market are safe and efficacious, whether they're made here or whether they're made elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, let me squeeze in another phone call real quickly. Good morning, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Yes, one of the granddaddies of all FDA stories, it involves a drug called thalidomide, which was approved in Europe but never approved in the United States, and it turned out to be a real nightmare drug. It had a side effect of birth defects in pregnant women. And so it's one of the reasons why the FDA takes a long time to approve things.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Thank you. So does the book explore these types of things?
The book is written like a legal thriller, so it's like a courtroom drama that takes place around the world, because this was not just a fight in the United States. It was worldwide litigation. It involved 20 or 30 different countries, and I think in every single major continent. And it takes place over a decade. So it's sort of like around the world, fast-paced legal thriller dealing with this particular lawsuit, which was the fight between these two companies over the right to be the first generic to sell the Lipitor product. But woven onto that, so that it's palatable and interesting to a general audience, is this behind-the-scenes stories of the people that were on the team and what they were going through at the same time. So I was trying to put a face to what is Big Pharma. It's people. It's just people like me and you who happen to work. So these personal stories, which all have a common theme, which I say is triumph over adversity. So it's a very uplifting story at the end, because you follow along the personal stories of several people who were fighting, against the odds, as well as, and those interwoven into this sort of around the world, legal thriller.
This is a wonderful story. I love this.
So do you have any conclusions? I mean, when if you have to go get a prescription filled, what do you say when they ask you?
Yeah. Well, I say, fortunately, I have had so few drugs that, anything would be like an antibiotic or something. And then I'm usually pretty lucky. I get a Z-Pack, and that's I can get a Pfizer generic. And, I know Pfizer makes fabulous drugs, whether they're branded or the generic side. Anything that Pfizer makes is going to be a top quality. So, but I do have some thoughts, and it's not about the generics. It's more about this law, which was enacted 32 years ago. I think we need to take a look at it as a society and see if it still works for us. Because from where I sit, 6 years out of Pfizer, representing other pharmaceutical companies, I don't see that it's working for anybody. It doesn't even work for the generics anymore. So maybe we need to take a look at this particular law that controls these patent disputes.
Wow.
That's a great way to end this conversation. Traci Medford-Rosow, thank you so much. The book is called Inflection Point. It's on Amazon and all the other places books are sold. And there's a website, I think, inflectionpointmemoir.com, correct?
That's right. Thank you very much, Larry and Robin.
Tracy, thank you. Thank you so much. We will be right back.
Hey, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. At one time, we were enemies. President Obama lifting a ban on weapons sales to Vietnam, a ban that had been in place for 50 years.
He said there'll be deeper defense cooperation, including equipping Vietnam's Coast Guard
to work more closely together in responding to humanitarian disasters.
The president speaking here in Hanoi after talks with Vietnam's leaders. They have been looking for support in a territorial standoff with China.
Fox Radio's Alistair Wanglund, a Mobile, Alabama city councilman in stable condition in Johannesburg, South Africa. Authorities say C.J. Small was shot in the face while riding a tour bus that was ambushed and those on board were robbed. At the Billboard Music Awards last night, Madonna and Stevie Wonder on ABC paying tribute to the late Prince with their version of Purple Rain. Weeknd was the night's big winner, taking home 8 awards, including Top Hot 100 Artist. Fox News. We report, you decide.